Hey there. So the mission of this video is going to be providing you with a review of the ParaGard Copper T IUD that I've been on for the past 2 years now. So again, about 2 years ago, I went into my gynecologist and had a discussion with him because I was sick and tired of hormonal forms of birth control, but I still wanted to be on something that was really effective and not hormone based. So that kind of led us to the decision to try out the ParaGard Copper T IUD. And again, IUD, it stands for a intrauterine device, which is a device that's placed inside of your uterus, and it's actually made of copper, and it's in the shape of a T. And it's done without any local or general anesthesia. It's a non-surgical procedure that you have done. And the procedure itself is a tad painful, but it was actually not as bad as I expected when it comes to the actual procedure. And something to note with this is the fact that they don't often advocate, and for that matter, recommend giving or administering any IUD, either the copper IUD or there's also a hormonal IUD, to young women who have never carried a child before, mainly because your uterus usually tries to reject it more so. Your uterus isn't used to having a foreign body in it whatsoever. Your uterus isn't as relaxed enough, so to speak, to receive the IUD. So from what I understood, it was potentially a more painful process as well because I'd never carried a child before. So I knew that going into it, but figured, hey, if I can make it through the actual procedure where they're putting this thing up into my uterus, then chances are I can handle whatever pain comes afterwards, particularly because I'm someone who's always had a very high pain tolerance. For instance, I've experienced broken wrist, a sprained ankle. I've had my appendix removed. I've passed kidney stones, for goodness sakes, and still never had to rely much on any form of pain management. I'd get prescribed Vicodin and just let it sit in a cabinet for months and months. I never really touched the stuff. Maybe an over-the-counter once in a while, but I probably averaged 2 over-the-counter pain medications, anti-inflammatories. Ibuprofen was always my anti-inflammatory pain med of choice. I probably averaged 3 pills an entire year for the past 10 years prior to getting this IUD put in. But I get the IUD put in, and for about a week and a half to 10 days, I'd say a solid 10 days after the IUD was put in, I was in some of the most excruciating pain I had ever experienced. I honestly related it imagery wise to, it felt like Edward Scissorhands was playing piano inside of my uterus. It hurt so bad. My uterus, obviously, again, had never carried a child before, or had anything in it for that matter before. That was a foreign body, and so it was trying to, not only was it flexible enough or to I guess, adapt to the IUD, but it was full on trying to reject the IUD from my body, which, I mean, picture period cramps multiplied by a million. I'd never experienced pain like this in my life. Like I said, I'd passed kidney stones a couple years before this, and that was like a cakewalk at this point. This was extremely painful. And when I did some searching online, a lot of it really did come back to the fact that I had never carried a child before, and so my uterus just was not as accepting of an environment for something like an IUD. So anyways, I was taking ibuprofen like it was candy. I was probably up to 600 to 800 milligrams in a day for an entire 10 days, which was, again, completely not like me whatsoever, but I needed to get through this, and luckily my body didn't reject it. Apparently, up to 30% of women who are administered the IUD, their body will full on reject it and expel it back out. Thank goodness mine didn't do that, so I went through all the pain and at least it stuck. So after that 10 days, everything was a lot better. Even any period I've had since then, maybe a little more painful cramping wise, but luckily in terms of pain, that first 10 days was hands down the worst. If you've never had kids before and you do get an IUD, just know that if you can make it through those first, week to 2 weeks, that once it's in, then you'll probably be okay after that. Just have ibuprofen or any anti-inflammatory for that matter ready to go. So that was the pain aspect of what I went through. But then there was the emotional aspect of what I went through and just side effects in general. And that was so discouraging right out the gates because one of the main reasons I wanted to get off of hormonal birth control in the first place was because of all the side effects associated with it. And this didn't happen, and the copper IUD was made of copper. It wasn't releasing any hormones into my body, so the side effects, there's not nearly as many that's associated with the IUD that are normally associated with hormones in hormonal birth control. So when I started having a lot of the same side effects, if not even worse than before, and especially in terms of my mental state and my emotional state, that was really unnerving for me, literally and metaphorically, I suppose. So again, I did a lot of research, but again, I made it through this couple of weeks, and once the pain was gone, and now I have this mental funk that I'm in. That's not okay, but again, I made it through all the pain, so I don't necessarily want to just jump to taking it right back out again, and dealing with the pain that's supposedly associated with that. So I did a lot of research and found that the copper in this IUD usually the way copper works in your body in general is it will amplify estrogen that's present in your system. So all the estrogen that was present in my system, and I had probably a decent buildup of it too from all the hormonal birth control pill that I'd been taking for years prior, was getting amplified in my system. So the side effects were all because of an estrogen dominance that was occurring within my body. And if you look up side effects of estrogen dominance, you'll get a laundry list of what that entails, and maybe you can see if you can relate to any of those and maybe relate that back to what might be happening if you are as well on the copper IUD. So again, that was kind of discouraging initially, but once you know what the answer is, you can kind of do a little bit more research in terms of finding out how to combat estrogen dominance and more specifically copper toxicity in your body. And I was also a lot more prone to copper toxicity because of my eating a more vegetarian and vegan diet for so long. You tend to be a little more naturally copper dominant at that point anyways, and not you don't usually have as much zinc in your system when you eat more of a plant-based diet, and zinc is the antagonist of copper. So the fact that my diet, plus the fact that I'd had all that estrogen in my system, plus the fact that I now had the copper in my system, like a fresh 13-year supply of copper sitting in my uterus, just made for a total bad environment in my body when it came to, again, like copper toxicity and issues related to that, which I suggest you look up if you are suspicious of having any of the same problems as well as the estrogen dominance. But again, luckily, once you know what the problem is, you can search a little more and find out what a solution might be. And sure enough, the solution, thank goodness, was very simple. And all it involved was me going to my local drugstore and getting a zinc supplement. The zinc supplement saved me completely. Now, I'm definitely an advocate of trying to get things in trying to get certain vitamins and minerals in through your diet as much as you can in healthy forms. So if you can find more zinc-rich foods, oysters is always the first one that comes to mind because oysters have so much zinc relative to copper as well, because that makes a difference too. The zinc to copper ratio in your body, and obviously my zinc to copper ratio is getting completely thrown off because I was completely copper dominant at this point, and I had to balance it out with the extra zinc. So again, if you can get it in a great form through your diet, even better. Personally, just because I have so much more copper in my body, I find that the supplement is the best way to go for me. Again, it cost me $3 or $4, and I take it every single day, 1 to 2, depending on how I feel, where I'm at. That completely helps counter the effects of the copper in my system that's being released by the IUD. And once I brought zinc into the picture, I would definitely recommend the copper IUD as an option. But again, you definitely want to know about the zinc in order to combat everything that can go awry with all the copper that's flooding your system once you get that thing put in. Outside of that, again, I've had a pretty good experience. I would recommend it. Just make sure you get your zinc. And the really cool part is that once it's in there, you don't have to remember to take a pill every day. It's still, besides the zinc, but again, you're not going to throw off the efficacy of your birth control if you forget to take your zinc. So the repercussions aren't quite so bad, which is nice. You don't have to remember to take a birth control pill every day when you have the IUD. It literally just sits in your uterus for, in this case with the ParaGard, they've even done studies recently, up to 12 years that it's effective, which is great. You don't have to worry about it. And if you are someone who wants to have kids one day, you can have it removed, and supposedly as soon as it's removed, you're pretty much going right back to being fertile again and don't have to worry about it interfering with your ability to conceive a child, which is great if that's something that you are considering one day. So I hope this review of the copper ParaGard IUD was helpful, because it was quite the roller coaster of an experience for me, and I hope this will help your experience go better if that's the method that you've decided on.